Hi, today is June 28th, and I wanted to bring you the news to some degree. The big news today is there was a surprise public hearing on the January 6th Capitol riot. A woman named Cassidy Hutchinson, described by the hearing as a surprise witness, and former White House aide to Trump's Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Her position gave her access to the president and his closest aides in the days leading up to the Capitol riot. She told the people that before his speech, when told of his supporters were armed, Trump said, "I don't even care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me," Hutchinson recounted. She said Trump instructed staff to let them all into his rally anyway. They can march to the Capitol from there. Trump became irate when he was told he would not be able to go to the Capitol with the crowd and tried to grab the steering wheel in the vehicle, Hutchinson relayed. Information she got from the Deputy Chief of Staff. Again, she was not there to see it, so it might have been exaggerated. It's hearsay. Meadows said Trump believed Vice President Mike Pence deserved to be targeted by the rioters, Hutchinson testified. When Trump tweeted during the riot, Pence did not have the courage to do what needs to be done, Hutchinson said she felt frustrated and disappointed. As an American, I was disgusted. It was unpatriotic. It was un-American. We were watching the Capitol building get defaced over a lie. Now, one thing I like to point out is this young woman may have been motivated by what happened at the Supreme Court Friday, because apparently she was not a witness until just recently. So she may have been trying to hurt the Trump administration. However, it does kind of sound like Donald Trump would do such a thing. Trump knew that some of his supporters were armed, but he was not concerned. Trump tried to grab the steering wheel. Trump was resistant to the police from his staff to do more to call off the riot. I mean, they've been saying that all along. Again, we have to figure out if this woman is credible or not. She might be exaggerating, and she might have been coaxed by some of the Democrats. Here's the really horrible news today, and that is that 51 people that were riding in the back of a tractor trailer that was supposed to be cooled have died. Other people were unconscious or unable to move from the heat that they were forced to be in as they tried to come across the border. I'd like to know how the border crossing people did not insist that that truck be opened. That to me sounds like there's a gap with Border Patrol, and they knew that this truck was coming through full of people. At least 50 people have been found dead inside a tractor trailer in San Antonio, Texas, in what appears to be a human smuggling attempt. Mexico's Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard said on Tuesday that at least 22 Mexicans, 7 Guatemalan, 2 Honduran nationals were identified among the dead. San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood had previously said that 16 people were found in the trailer. It's now up to 51 people. It's a terrible, terrible incident. But everyone's at fault here. Number one, the American government, with us having 12 million illegal aliens in this country, are using them as a pawn to hurt small business people and big business people, because no doubt those 12 million people will seek work. They will be employed. Everyone knows that the Hispanic community are some of the best workers in the world, and they are working, but they're working illegally. I believe the government is using them to try to hurt and to try to fine small businesses, just so that the government has more power. In the meantime, the gates are open at the border, and it's everyone's fault in the administration and prior administration that that's been happening. Even though Trump took a tough stance on this, he never did what he should have done, and that was get everybody in America that's here illegally a Social Security card, so at least they're paying taxes and we can keep track of people. They also need to be restricted in terms of voting. So I believe the Democrats are trying to get the illegals in here so they can vote, since they're asking that people not be asked for their identification. But all of the Congress people and senators are at fault here because they're making it very difficult, and they're using it as a weapon against business people and against the people coming across. It's a horrible thing. I was in tears earlier about this. It's just terrible to see this. In other news, no fish for you, China. U.S. President Joe Biden on Monday signed a national security memorandum to fight illegal fishing, part of the pledged efforts to help countries combat alleged violations by fishing fleets, including those of China. The White House said in a statement that it also would launch alliance with Canada and the United Kingdom. Maybe China is trying to starve us by just fishing out our waters and making it more and more difficult. That causes inflation too. Bad people, have bad credit. At least that's what the pay-as-you-go people think. Here's a story out of Indonesia. Mounting debt began with a single mobile phone purchase. A person who lives in Kuala Kapuas, central Kalimantan, about 1,600 kilometers from Jakarta, had dreamed of upgrading to a newer model for months, but did not have enough cash. Then earlier this year, a 21-year-old university student noticed an option to buy now, pay later. This is happening in America too. What happens is the phone got activated, and he was supposed to make monthly payments from his earnings. More than 4 months later, Putri is still struggling to pay back the balance, along with mounting interest. That's why they do pay later, is so that they can charge you interest. Very high interest. I'm too scared to even use my phone now, Putri told Al Jazeera, asking to a pseudonym to protect her anonymity. There's buy now, pay later everywhere. This is just one example of a story I pulled out of Al Jazeera, but it's happening everywhere, and the stocks are being affected. The rate of people not paying the bill is extremely high, and it's a trap. Okay. More news from Russia. There's been some key events that have happened. Number one, in fighting. Russian missiles hit a crowded shopping center and wounding about 59 people. More than 1,000 people were inside when 2 Russian missiles slammed into the shopping mall. Russian forces in Moscow-backed separatists now control part of an oil refinery in the city of Lysychansk. Moscow State News Agency TASS reported the governor of Ukraine's Luhansk region, Serhiy Haidai, said Russian forces are storming the town of Lysychansk from the west and southwest. 5 people were killed and more than 30 people were wounded in Russian attacks on Kharkiv on Monday, Zelensky said. In the diplomacy area, U.S. President Joe Biden plans to announce an extension of U.S. troops' presence in Poland and changes to U.S. deployments in several Baltic nations that he allowed ahead of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This president is the slowest person I've ever seen. By not having soldiers in Poland, in Ukraine, we've let Russia make these advances, and that's why it's gone this far. Any encroachment of Russian-annexed Crimean Peninsula by a NATO member state should amount to a declaration of war on Russia, which could lead to World War III. Guess what? It's too late. Russia and China have combined together. The United Nations Council will hold an emergency meeting on Tuesday on Russia's targeting civilians. We have weak leadership, and we have weak leadership because the people that voted for these people are fools. We are in World War III. They're not turning back now. As far as the economy goes affected by the war, the group of G7, club of wealthy nations, pledged to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes, promising new sanctions. Again, if you saw the G7 meetings, these people are laughing. People are dying in Ukraine. People are being hurt economically around the world. And these people are laughing, trying to mock the Soviet president Putin, which is the last thing you do to a man that has nuclear weapons. Biden raised the tariff rate on certain Russian imports to 35%. Are you kidding me? We shouldn't take anything Russian. From the Middle Country, Sandusky, Ohio. Birth control pills should be made available as an over-the-counter product rather than one that requires a prescription, the American Medical Association says. The AMA adopted a resolution on the matter on June 15th at the group's annual meeting in Chicago just before the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that is allowing many states, including Ohio, to ban abortion. The AMA says it's encouraging the Food and Drug Administration to approve over-the-counter access for oral contraceptives without any restrictions. Ladies and gentlemen, I knew that this would happen, and that's why I invested heavily in birth control and day after pills. Not purchasing myself, but a company, ENDP. I'm currently holding about 70,000 shares because this is a no-brainer. People can scream and cry and say they're going to fight the Supreme Court, but it's not going to happen. So the states are going to have to take control, and people are going to naturally try to avoid to be getting pregnant. So, therefore, men will be asked to wear condoms, women are going to use birth control pills, and other methods of birth control are going to be skyrocketing off the shelves. It's a no-brainer. The AMA sent a manufacturer application to the FDA to allow easier access to birth control pills is expected to be submitted before the end of the year. The AMA said it will continue to advocate its position and said issues that should be studied include providing full insurance coverage without cost sharing for over-the-counter birth control pills. Not too complicated to understand why that would happen. And just think about it. Doesn't this really change the attitude immediately of people about using abortion as a birth control? Perhaps the Supreme Court, even though they made a legal decision, have affected the way people are thinking. Home price growth started, this is regarding homes. Home price growth started to slow in the U.S. in April. A national measure of prices climbed 20.4% in April, down from 20.6% gain in March. CoreLogic Case-Shiller Index showed Tuesday. Craig Lazaro, managing director of at the S&P Dow Jones Indices, noted that April data was showing initial but inconsistent signs of deceleration in price gains. Mortgage rates have nearly doubled since the end of 2021. The run-up in rates combined with high prices are squeezing potential buyers and starting to slow housing markets in some of the most popular pandemic boomtowns. Seattle's housing market is cooling too. Local home prices were still climbing this April, but at a slower pace. You know why this happened, people? This happened because the Federal Reserve got political. And they, along with the federal government, decided to, number one, keep interest rates low, okay? But number two, throw a lot of money at people that are sitting home, getting $600 extra than unemployment, giving PPE money to small businesses that weren't even operating. This is what happens when politically you try to use a pandemic to control people and to gain political power. Congratulations to all the people that became depressed, to the senior football players that were unable to play their last year, to the people that couldn't go to graduations. And now, houses are not going to sell for those people in trouble, and we're going to have massive amounts of foreclosure because we had a forbearance in mortgages. I'm sorry, but you voted for these people, you wanted these people, and you got it. Let's take a look what's happening in the newspapers real quick. Okay, it's already 14 minutes we're into the news. Apparently Joe Biden was advising his son on business. They have a tape from 2018 that says that. It was in a voicemail. Big derailment of Amtrak train in Missouri in the middle of a cornfield. I believe 3 people died. There was a dump truck in front of the tracks, which caused the derailment. I don't know what happened to the people in the dump truck, but it was a very, very serious accident, and we're all fortunate that more people did not die. There was a very big ruling yesterday, basically that said that a coach can go to the middle of the field after a game in private and pray. And this is a big deal. I think that praying should be freedom of speech. People were arguing that it's not freedom of speech. It eliminates the separation of church and state because it's public schools and it's a public field, so they felt that it was wrong. However, the Supreme Court said no, you can pray because it was a very private exhibition of prayer just between the coach and what he believes is his God. So kudos to that. Something about people trying to vote when they were not citizens. Zelensky is begging people of the G7 to help him on defense, and these jokers right here are laughing. They're laughing. You know why? Because they want the war to end. They don't care if Ukraine loses. I've told you this a million times. They don't care. What they want are their oil prices down and to keep their cushy jobs and to be able to hang out together and drink tea and crumpets. Disgusting. Let's see. I rarely, do this, but okay. Madonna had a beautiful daughter. Madonna is the blonde, and the daughter is the brunette. Congratulations, but guess what? We all have beautiful daughters. Not news at all. Let's move on to some better news. Wall Street Journal. Let's get the what's news section out of the way. Credit Suisse, former employee of the bank, were found guilty in a Swiss federal criminal court of helping a Bulgarian crime ring launder money related to cocaine trafficking. Cocaine trafficking only happens because you're using cocaine. VW is close to selling minority stake in U.S. electric vehicle recharging business to an arm of Siemens, a deal that would value the network at $2 billion. I'd like to know who that is. General Electric said CEO Kulp is immediately taking over the reins of the company's jet engine business, giving him direct oversight of the division. I think jet engines are in big demand, so that could be pretty good for GE if they get it right. Some of these big companies that are staunchy old companies, they're never going to make it back. You know why? Because they played politics for years. U.S. stocks lost ground in Monday's session. Tencent, a Chinese company I could give two craps about. Nike's quarterly sales. Sorry, I don't buy Nike because all their players kneel at the flag. But their quarterly sales were flat. Maybe because I didn't buy anything. Crypto broker Voyager Digital said hedge fund 3 Hours had defaulted, failing to make loan payments tied to large bets in the digital currency realm. Which means that Voyager is going to have big trouble. Global Wafers unveiled a plan to build a $5 billion factory in Sherman, Texas to manufacture silicon wafers, but the deal hinges on financial incentives bogged down in Congress. That's going to get passed, so I bet on that. Ukraine Zelensky appealed to G7 leaders, we know that. The High Court clarified how judges should apply 2018 criminal justice reform bill, giving thousands of federal inmates serving time for drug offenses new hope for being freed. Where are the people speaking about that? That's a positive. Regions across the U.S. face an uncertain abortion landscape on Monday as some states move to enforce new restrictions. Digital World Acquisition, the SPAC that plans to merge on Trump's social media company, said a federal grand jury issued subpoenas to all its members. Politics. But I think the death of that SPAC is near because the fact is that Twitter is going to become the main social media. Let's continue on. World War II veteran gets his due, 101 years old. Let's see. Let's move forward, move forward, move forward. The drug trial starts for the WNBA star in Russia. Hey, not so bright there, WNBA star. You go to a foreign country and you've got a product, a vape product. Number one, you're an athlete. You shouldn't even be vaping with you that contains a controlled substance. You're in Russia. What do you expect is going to happen? I give you no pity. India defends rise in Russian oil purchases. Well, you know, India is doing what it has to do. And let me tell you this. As oil prices rise, and they will rise, Russia will become stronger and stronger. China is opening up, so they're going to be buying Russian oil. And it's a very complicated situation. But what should happen is oil production should increase in the United States, and for that matter, the profits should be tax-free. If you want to get more oil out of the ground here, and we have plenty of it, and you want to get it to Europe, you better make some concessions and stop fighting with the oil companies instead of running to the communists and trying to find your oil there. I'm a broken record. Okay, here's an interesting story I did not read through, but basically, I want to go back to page 1. Past catches up to biotech wizard charged in murder. Even as a teenager back in Turkey, Serhat Gümrükçü dazzled audience. In 2002 video, he opened one of his magic shows dancing with a cane that appeared to be levitating. He was introduced as a medical student and went by the stage name Dr. No. A little more than a decade later, not long after Mr. Gümrükçü arrived in the U.S., he had his hand in a multi-million-dollar oil and real estate deals. Yet his best-known venture was in medicine. For a time, he thrilled investors with ideas from groundbreaking treatments and drew special notice from the government's top infectious disease officials, Anthony Fauci. This is judgment by Anthony Fauci. In America, the magician had found a new, more lucrative audience. Enochian Biosciences, Inc., co-founded with Mr. Gümrükçü in 2018, paid more than $21 million to companies controlled by Mr. Gümrükçü and his husband for consulting, research, and licensing of potential drugs to treat influenza, hepatitis B, HIV, COVID-19, and company financial shows. Dr. Gümrükçü is one of those rare geniuses that is not bound by scientific discipline or dogma. He sees connections and opportunities often missed. Enochian Vice Chairman Mark Dybul, now Chief Executive, said in 2019 news release about Enochian's licensing of hepatitis B drug from a company controlled by Mr. Gümrükçü. Mr. Gümrükçü's success as a biotech entrepreneur afforded the purchase last year of an $18.4 million office complex in North Hollywood, a neighborhood in Los Angeles, and earlier $5.5 million house in Hollywood Hills. Yet much of what people saw with Mr. Gümrükçü was an illusion. He cast misrepresenting himself and his credentials according to state and federal authorities, court records, former colleagues, and those who have sued and won judgments against him over fraudulent medical and financial dealings. Prosecutors now allege that Mr. Gümrükçü arranged the murder of a business associate, Gregory Davis, who threatened to expose him as a fraud. Such a revelation would have put at risk the 39-year-old entrepreneur's deal with Enochian, they said. You know who's at fault here? The venture capitalists, the banks, everybody. If you've got an accent and you come from another country and you present yourself to investors, they love you. They don't want to hear from simple people that come from Patterson, New Jersey, or Ohio, or somewhere in New Mexico. You don't have the class for them. They're looking to invest in a mystery. The guy was a fraud the whole time. Unbelievable. Okay, that's just the arts. Battery deal, Nike sales. And that's pretty much about it. But let's take a quick look at USA Today. And Barron's. Barron's, by the way, I have to say, Barron's to me is an empty paper. When I read through Barron's, I get a couple of stories that are common, that everybody knows. And I think that they're printing stock prices in their paper just to fill up the paper. Sorry, but I'm not impressed at all. This is just one big advertisement here. Top 100 women financial advisors. I'll give you one since I'm on the page. Michelle Young, Ameriprise Financial, Edina, Minnesota. Total assets, $1,200,000. Typical actual size, 1.8. Anyway, let's move on to USA Today. Things are getting late here. Two-part primary starts in New York. So there's some voting going on there. People are still talking about Uvalde, as they should. I'm actually going to be taking a ride there just to kind of nose around, take some pictures. I'm going to be on my way to the oil fields in Texas, the Permian oil fields. I'm supposed to do a story with a company called Pedevco. I'm a stockholder in that company, but I've learned with the stock market, you've really got to verify everything before you invest. Or if you invested, you have to go out there and find out what's going on. Bans on abortion may affect medical residents' trainings. I doubt it. Biden takes practical steps on police reform. Let's hope so. And that's your news for June 28th. Although, I have to say that I did get a positive review from people that the Elvis movie is very, very good. So go see it and enjoy yourself. Thanks for watching Newsweek.com. I'm sure I missed so much. There's so much going on in the world. But one thing you should remember is these poor people that come up from Mexico for a better life to work here in America. It's nobody's fault except America for not building Mexico by building relationships economically instead of going all the way to China. If you can save 20% in Mexico, but you save 50% in China, which would you choose? A capitalist, pro-American country, or China? The mistakes have been made by the people in charge. And our politicians, if you vote anyway, you should demand that these people are treated fairly. They should be given Social Security cards, and small business people should stop being threatened all over the country by the Department of Labor and everyone else who just wants to make trouble.